Skagella Bajella. G'day. This video takes inspiration from Nerdforge and other people who have done this layered resin acrylic pouring. Looks very cool and I really wanted to try it, and so did Chloe Rose. So we're collaborating on this video, and in the spirit of our collaboration, neither of us knew what we're starting off with. We had a little call and we had one word to prompt each other's creation. Chloe, your word is deteriorate.
Okay, I was gonna go with moon.
I've got to deal with the moon and you've got to deteriorate something.
Chloe Rose Art is a long-term friend of the channel. If you haven't checked out her stuff, you're really missing out. She does a lot of the sort of thing I do, playing around with different art mediums. So go check out Chloe's video after you watch mine, and subscribe to Chloe Rose Art while you're over there.
In getting started, I need a basin to paint and pour in. And I have the joy of having an obscenely, stupidly large and industrial laser cutter that I can make these things with. I'm gonna pour UV resin in it, cure it with this UV light that Rob broke. I just need it to not shed glass. All right, so that'll come in useful later, but I'm not gonna jump into it straight away. I need a plan first. So imagine I've got this moon here. I feel like it should be a fairly standout central piece. So that'll definitely be its own layer, but I think there should be multiple layers of clouds surrounding the moon. And then we can have a future layer sort of in front. We need asymmetry, but I think like something like, if it's sort of swirling slightly in front of the moon, it'll like look like the sky is parting for this doomsday to come. Along with the clouds, there should be mountains and Hyrule. And we can sort of bring some trees in with a patch of ground here that our hero is standing here. Navi, the fairy, can be flying around Link there, but I think that composition will be really cool because it'll pull the eye forward. Ooh, maybe even some trees in the foreground, really create that sense of depth. Maybe a couple here, just like some bushes and stuff. That to me, if that was a layered painting, would feel really, really cool.
So with my weirdly satisfying and perfect box built and a good helping of release agent applied, I poured my first layer of clear resin. I just thought I'd do a blank clear layer without any paint applied, just to create obviously a resin surface to paint on and hopefully create some structure that the rest can be built on and have some stability. Turns out that would end up being a problem, especially when the next layer after I added all my inks, because the resin, or the UV resin I guess, heats up while it cures. And I guess my UV light is pretty strong or something, so I don't know if it accelerated the curing process, but let's just say that heated curing created some challenges.
So I'm gonna try and create a little bit of a vignette. So I think if it's really dark in the, oh no, it's not cured. Whoops. What do I do? Next time, touch it before you do stuff.
It's hardened everywhere else pretty quick. There you go. Okay, I can feel it hardening. That's so weird.
I think it's simple. I think there's so much ink that it's not properly curing. So I think to actually put down the first layer of paint, I should do another layer of just some clear on top. So the butane torch helps burn these bubbles away. You can see on the surface of the resin. Whoa! And then as I apply the UV, you'll see it heats up and there's fumes that come up, which is obviously why I'm wearing a mask, and I'll pop on the fan to push those fumes away. All right, so I think you can say things are going pretty well. We have to start again. As you can see, the whole thing is bowed up. I'm gonna get this out. Ugh, God. I'm actually encouraged by the beginning. Even though I have to start again, it looks pretty cool. So without any further ado, let's jump into an epic montage of doing the same thing, but wiser. Lifting up. So obviously the oil and even some of the previous ink is meaning that the air's getting under and it's lifting it. I'm hoping, oh no, see that just lifted there. I'm gonna start again. Let's see if this works. Get out, go on. There you go. So start with a thinner layer or do I start with a thicker layer? I have no idea what I'm doing.
All right, with 2 failed attempts out of the way, 3rd time's the charm, but this time I tried to approach things a little differently. First of all, I, as thoroughly as possible, wiped away all the release agent. I figured there would be enough oil left on the surface to still do the job. And then after my first layer of UV resin was poured and cured, I started off by doing the vignette with an oil black. That way I could have a much thinner substance, add a much more impactful vignette around the back areas of the piece, and still add alcohol ink to the early layers, but be a little more measured in my approach. I think part of the reason for the earlier warping was that the top layer was much more unbalanced in how distributed the UV resin was, and it sort of cooked the alcohol ink as it cured. But I'm hopeful with this slightly more subtle and well mixed approach, I'll have a nice sort of color backing to my whole piece.
Oh no, I'm lifting. Oh, I really don't want to start again. Now let's set this straight. Lock it in. I'm gonna give this a couple of hours to set, properly cure and cool down.
Slowly but surely, it started to come together and the effect was beginning to happen, and my God, did it look cool. Like the very first layers of clouds, yeah, it was really fun to put down, but it's actually after 2 or 3 layers where you can sort of see that 3D effect taking place. And the effect I was going for with the clouds is that obviously the topmost clouds in the piece look more distant and the lower clouds look like they're sort of being pushed towards you through the moon being thrown through the sky. It was already working, and it was already working really well. I also thought with the moon, initially I was going to paint it all in one layer, but even with fairly thickly put down oils, because the whole thing is so transparent, you can just look through them if there's anything remotely thin in the layering. So I did an opaque layer with some basic shading for the moon, so that on a layer on top of that, I could paint the moon and there would be more opacity. Even though I did that backing to try and create more opacity with the moon, I still wanted to make sure it was a solid looking object. So I masked a clean circle and painted inside that the moon from Majora's Mask in Zelda. And I worked with these oils really thickly. This was not easy because painting thick wet oil on top of thick wet oil is really hard. You have to constantly clean and reapply the oil onto the brush, and then once it goes down, it immediately starts mixing. So it was pretty challenging, but the reason I did it this way is because, I mean, A, I didn't have time for the oils to dry, and B, I couldn't really do it on an above layer because there would be a 3D separation, which would be a little weird in this case. So I just stuck to the process and painted the thick oils and tried to be patient, and slowly but surely got the look I was after. But then the cool thing about the UV resin is with the next layer of resin applied and cured on top, the paintwork I'd done would be frozen in time forever, but would never cure. So actually, this really thickly painted oil moon of Majora's Mask's moon will be forever uncured and wet inside this hardened and cured resin. I just find that super cool.
All right, everything is going according to plan. Almost. There's a slight issue, and that is this bubbling, as you can see. This is purely because I painted all the way to the bottom with the oil paints, which left a little bit of a gap, and then when the resin was curing and it heats and warps slightly, it pulls up and lets in the air. So the plan is I'm going to pre-cure a little very thin border of resin around the bottom edges in particular, so that I can paint all the way up to almost the edges. And then when I pour resin on top, hopefully it will create a seal from resin to resin on top of the paint. No idea if this will work, and I'm on my way to find out. So I'm literally just curing that little bead I've put down just now. Look at that, look how quick that sets. Matter of seconds, and that's not liquid anymore. So this next layer is my test to see if that works. I've got a seal along the bottom edge, and I'm starting to really work in the foreground. If this works, I think we're looking pretty good to get to the finish line. All right, and just like that, the mystery is not solved. Happened again. I'm not exactly sure what it is. My sealant method did not work, but you know what? At the end of the day, the stuff that's showing hasn't got that happening. The moment, touch wood, it's just the bottom there, and I'm gonna be covering all the bottom and the foreground anyway. So I'm just gonna keep going and hope that it doesn't die.
So now we're onto the foreground layers. Starting off with the dark trees to really add that sense of scale and depth. Oh my God, by this stage, it was really, really singing to me. I want to do this again, you guys.
All right, so I have just finished my second last layer. I have one last painting layer to go, but I left the windows open for ventilation, and a little bug got caught in the resin. Sorry, buddy. All right, but the good news is this is looking pretty bloody good. One more layer, one final coat of 2-part resin. I'm hoping we can make it to the end. I feel like we can, and I feel like this has been a worthy experiment so far.
Next, it was time to add our hero in the foreground. And as you can see, I already pre-painted a little bit of a glow behind, so that on the layer above where I would paint Link and his fairy, who I am informed while recording the voiceover was not Navi, but his Tattle. Did I say that right? Tattle? Tattle. So don't at me in the comments. Rob saved me. Thanks, Rob. It'll all really stand out. Painting him on the foreground layer closest to the viewer just really gives it that sense of grounded perspective.
All right, so this is a bit of a moment of truth here, because I've built this box that, as you can see, it's warped. I think it's the heat of the resin curing that's warped it, not the torch I use with every layer, simply because of how warped the bottom is. The torch would not have done that. But I don't know if this is gonna come out of the frame I built. This probably isn't the way you should do this. Whoa, maybe it is. Look at that, satisfying glossy, and hell yeah. Such joy. Look at that. Oh my God. Now, it is a bit warped. It's not perfect or flush around the edges, especially around those initial layers where most of the warping happened. I'm really happy with it. Bit of a clean up and some sexy lighting, and I think it'll show it off nicely.
So with my pretty much finished piece released from the mold, I'm gonna take a few risks to try and wrap this thing up as best as I can. I'm gonna cut the edges and sand everything back to go for a really clean look. I could tolerate the warps, but I'm gonna decide not to. I'm gonna take some risks because I'm also gonna learn from this piece to see what I can do with future pieces. This is so fun. I wanna try this again sometime. So let me know what I should try in future, but I definitely wanna do it again, and I definitely wanna go bigger. Aside from that, I also want to add a little accentuation behind the piece. Because it sees through all the way to the back, I'm going to use this opportunity to paint a couple of stars in the sky and then very lightly airbrush some color with alcohol ink over the back to just add that little bit more opacity and color to a vibrant night sky behind. Bringing the whole thing together, my clear resin 3-dimensional painted and poured piece.
So I'm pretty happy with mine. How are you feeling about yours, Chloe?
I am really happy with the actual artwork. I
Yeah.
just wish that I had a little bit more experience with the actual resin because I had a few hiccups with that. But the artwork, I'm very happy with.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've got bubbles in mine and stuff.
Yeah.
It's challenging, but I learned a lot from it. I definitely want to give this another go. Deterioration. What'd you do with that curveball? Wow, that's so cool. That's amazing. Guys, go check out
Thank
Chloe
you so
Rose's
much.
video and subscribe while you're there. Amazing art challenges and all sorts of fun, different like art materials she plays with. Chloe, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining me on this collab.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. All right, you ready to see what I made? So
Yes, I am.
Your prompt for me was moon. So I did a piece from like Zelda.
Whoa, that's so cool.
And here it is, my final resin poured and layered painting. I'm really happy with how this piece turned out, but the activity itself is some of the most fun I've had doing art on this channel in a while. And I have a lot of fun with all of our videos, but this felt like a taste test. I want to do this again, but I want to do it big. So I want your input. Let me know in the comments. If I go big, how big and what should I do? What is gonna really take advantage of this depth? Because it's so fun seeing that depth. I've also learned a lot about what I can change and optimize to do better next time. I have some ideas about how I'm gonna use 2-part epoxy resin as well as the UV resin to make sure it just ends up with a clean finish without needing to cut or sand anything. But let me know in the comments, and of course subscribe so you can see that when it comes out in the future. Otherwise, for now, as far as this video and this piece goes, I'm really proud of it. I had so much fun, and I really hope you've enjoyed coming along the journey with me. Thanks to Chloe for joining this collab with me. Go watch her video and subscribe. But that is it for now, and until next time, I'll see you later.